3, 2, 1. This is The Jungle, an up-close, unvarnished look inside leadership and business strategy. We wade into the real-world leaders' face and explore what they do to create a path forward, because that's what business is. Wild, exciting, it's The Jungle.
3, 2, 1. Doug DeVos, welcome to The Jungle.
Thank you. Great to be in the jungle. I love it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You have water today, not the excess. Yeah.
I don't have excess today. I've got the perfect water, which is also another product that we've had. So I'm staying loyal to Amway products.
The perfect water. Hold up that bottle so we can see it. I just want to, because this is video.
There we go. I want to make sure I don't spill, right? Extra oxygenated.
Extra oxygenated water. That sounds, gotta get some of that too. I'm going to do a order here.
That's right. We got you covered. We'll turn this into a sales call pretty soon.
So, Doug, this is the first time we've got to do a full podcast with you. We got to do a more partial podcast back in fall of 2021, which feels like a lifetime ago. We were chatting about the kind of future of business in West Michigan through the Cranes Homecoming initiative that they have. So it's great to be back and spend some time chatting with you.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start off with, we just started this before we started the call. You're right now co-chair of Amway, but you've got a lot of other things going on, including a podcast. Why don't we start off a little bit about what's on your plate these days?
Gosh, well, yeah, thanks. Thanks for reminding me. I've got a few things going on. Amway still remains a huge part of my life, our family's life. And when we transitioned a few years ago, Steve and I, from operational to a board level, still staying close to the business as co-chair. Stephen Andel, my business partner for many years. That keeps us a little busy, but not nearly from what we were doing in the past. But I think I'd kind of break it down to 3 areas. Business still remains very interesting, and so we started with my family, with my children and a few friends, a business that's kind of focused a little more locally on Michigan businesses. Smaller, medium-sized businesses that we can invest in through funds, invest in directly, and get close to, which is a lot of fun. I've had more time for community engagement now, so through our foundation and the work that we're doing with other charitable organizations and business organizations focused on community activities, that's kept me very, very busy. And then there's always a public policy angle, because whenever you're in business, or especially in community areas, there's a lot of if I may be so bold, unintended consequences from government engagement, and so creating dialogue about how to remove barriers for people to be successful. And sometimes unintentionally, government ends up putting up barriers to stop people from having a chance to be successful. So those are the areas that keep me going.
A lot on your plate. Maybe before we get into several of those buckets, I'd like to ask you about the core premise of your podcast that just came out earlier this year. And I
forgot about that.
You have a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And so you have this very interesting and provocative kind of opening description, which is that America is in a crisis of belief in ourselves, in each other, and in our country as a whole. The sooner we discover what binds us together, the sooner we'll overcome the challenges we face and unleash a brighter future for tomorrow. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on what is animating that kind of statement and that kind of spirit and principles you're trying to bring to the different initiatives you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is basically this, that people will have us believe, or try to have us believe, that we're far more divided than we really are. And when we talk about things we believe in, we can find a lot of overlap, even with people with whom we think we may disagree. And there's sometimes where you're also maybe at a point where you don't know what you believe. You may have an opinion, and you may have a thought, but you maybe not have a depth of what you really believe about something. And so we want to kind of wrap all those things together, have conversations about topics, whether it's higher education, whether it is some political engagement, whether it's business activities, things of that nature. where, community activities, things that are happening, kind of in the areas, if you will, that I'm trying to, stay active with, and say, what do you really believe about that? Why are you committing your career, your life's work, or something else to this purpose, to this cause that you have? And what do you want people to know about that? And it's not trying to necessarily advocate one belief system over another, although there's some that I may or may not align more with than others, but is to at least get the discussion out there. And hopefully the listeners and the audience will say, well, I can identify with that. Or even if I don't identify with that, I have a better understanding of where they're coming from. I'm involved with the National Constitution Center as well in Philadelphia. And one of the main things they do is they pick a topic, they have a debate. And at the beginning, they say, who likes this side? Who likes that side? At the end of the debate, they say, did you change your position? No one really changes their position. But then they ask the question, say, do you have a better understanding of the other position? And everybody's hand goes up. And so hopefully through the discussion, we can find a way to at least identify, but hopefully bridge gaps, bridge divides, and really get that discussion going. Because we found in our Amway experience throughout the course of the business over 60 years now, there's values that people identify with globally. And there's so many cultural differences. There's so many things that can break us apart or keep us apart. But yet when you talk about the ideas of freedom, family, hope, reward, having, entrepreneurship, having your own business, we've connected with people from all different backgrounds, not only across the United States, but around the world. And so that's kind of the idea, is that you have a chance, to talk about things that I trust will have people understanding a belief system in a new way, and really spark that belief system in themselves for them to say, hey, this is what I believe.
And what's motivated that for you as a kind of a governing purpose? There's so many challenges that we face in the world: business, government, education. What was this? How did this idea come about as the lane you want to play in around uniting people around common principle? What animated that?
Well, it goes back to our life in Amway, that we would have a lot of business discussions with people on different sides of an issue. But if you just have the discussion, you can generally find your way to a solution, or at least a lot closer to one, and find you're not as far apart as you were. So that's what animates it. The idea really comes from, I took the title from my father's first book that he wrote in the 1970s called Believe. And he just articulated the things he believed in and why he believed in them, and that he hoped it would be helpful for people to have that understanding. And so what animated me to do it was, the idea through this forum is just so wonderful, to have the chance to talk, to have the chance to have a dialogue. And especially with what we've been through in the past couple of years, or what we expect from the marketplace with our entertainment, that I'm going to watch things when I want to watch it, and I'm going to listen to things when I want to listen to them. So to create a library, if you will, where people can engage at a little deeper level. And so that's why I think these are great forums. That's why it's so fun to talk about issues like you talk about, here on the Jungle, and how we can duplicate that in other forums as well.
So maybe let's narrow in a little bit around kind of belief in Michigan and belief in West Michigan. So we have a shared, all three of us have a shared interest and passion for Michigan, for West Michigan, and really thinking about the future success of the state, both from an economic perspective as well as education, where we sit as well here at Western Michigan University. Right. Curious to kind of know how you're thinking about the future of business. Let's talk about the future of business in West Michigan. What do you see right now? What do you see as the challenges coming up in the next, decade to come?
Sure. Well, it's for many years, as a global business and being involved with Amway, I was gone most of the time. So people would say, what do you think? What's going on in Grand Rapids? I'd say, I have no idea. I've hardly been there. I may live there. That's where my family is, but because you just weren't as wired to it. And that was one of the things I wanted to do since I had more time after the transition to the role of chair at Amway, is to spend a little bit more time. And so the belief is, the business is strong, but like anything, the future is never secure. And so, so every business is going through some level of challenge. And I just remind myself when I drive around the countryside, when you drive anywhere, you just look around the road, just observing the unbelievable array of businesses that are there, that drive our economy, that provide jobs. And when I'm involved with business settings, with business leaders, especially of small and medium-sized businesses, their hearts are with their customers for sure to keep the business going, but with their employees families, with their community. They'll do anything to provide a job, to keep a job being provided, to make sure that they're strong and moving forward. And you see their heart flowing out. So we start with this really, really strong base. But like anything, you're a generation away, from losing that strength. And it's the values that need to transition. Sure, that's the capabilities, it's the skills, it's that sort of piece as well. But it's the values, it's the belief systems that need to transition from generation to generation. And why business has value, why business has purpose beyond making a profit. There's good reason to make a profit, but it's not only to get rich yourself. It's what making that process does, the value you provide in the marketplace, the value you provide for your customers, your employees, your community, and so on. So I think looking forward, that's the greatest risk that we face. And that's why I want to be engaged, not only in business, but in community and with public policy. In communities, there's many communities that haven't participated in the business activity of Western Michigan or Michigan as a whole, and they should have that opportunity. They haven't had that opportunity. There's large groups of people who would like to, who have the capability to, who have the interest to, but for a lot of reasons that we all know, some people have been denied opportunity. We have to recognize that. And so there's an element of saying, how do we connect there and say that the way forward, the way to bridge that gap is the capital system, is the business community, and the business leaders have a role to play in making that connection and investing in communities that have traditionally not had opportunities to be successful. The other side is the government side, where there's this view that businesses are just greedy, and that they're not taxed enough. They take too much out of our society. They don't give back enough to our society. They're not necessarily a public good, and I completely disagree with that. Businesses, by their essence, are a public good because they provide value to a customer ultimately through a product or service. And therefore, that we need to tax them more, we need to regulate them more, we need to put them more into a corner, we need to make it a little harder for them to get started. And so the burden, not that government doesn't have a role in regulating business, but the burden becomes so great that our economic engine has a tougher time continuing, that the entrepreneurial spirit of the entrepreneur has a tougher time starting, or the person going from this level to that level has a tougher time getting the permits to expand, or getting the the support that they need to take that next step, to take that next risk so they can grow. And so I think I see enough concern there to spend time being active there with not just myself, but with a lot of people in community and a lot of people in public policy, a lot of business leaders who share that concern and want to make sure that we are enacting wise public policy and that we're connecting with communities and expanding opportunity for more people, so that we see a common pathway to success rather than destroying the economic structure that has brought so much prosperity to our country and increased the quality of life so much, rather than kind of going away and saying, well, government's going to take care of it all. So there's a long answer for you. Sorry for rambling.
No, that's a great answer. So quick question, just for clarification for listeners and myself, actually, because so Amway's big global corporation, right? You're traveling all around the world. You move into chair and you say, I want to get back to a local level. And you start a new business with some partners and some family members focused on small and medium-sized businesses. So the opposite of what kind of Amway is. I mean, Amway was there at one time, right? But they grew to a global powerhouse. And so what are you trying to do? And then how does the Western Michigan community interact with that entity? Right. So what is that entity's core purpose? I like the passing the values and beliefs down from generation to generation. So what prompted you to start that in this new business entity of funding small and medium-sized West Michigan businesses? And then, what's the core purpose there? And then how do people interact with you, stakeholders?
Sure. Well, the idea is curiosity and learning. Because there's a whole world when they walk around. I'm just curious, who are these people? What are they doing? How do they get started? How do they keep going? How do they learn? And then how do I learn from that? Because at a big business, there's a lot of people. And, by the time I got involved in leadership, I got involved in leadership at Amway, it was a pretty big business already. And so I kind of missed out on that phase, if you will, of leadership. And so it really is a drive of just being curious and wanting to learn and believing that small and medium-sized businesses are the absolute backbone of our economy. Sure, a lot of companies grow big and we talk about them and they're very visible, but it's the hundreds and thousands of businesses that are part of chambers of commerce across the country that are employing anywhere from 10 to 20 to 50 or 100 people maybe, or something like that. And so I was just curious about what they do, the things they make. So we got involved with a company that makes rivets. They do a really good job making rivets. It's not a huge, sexy, interest, but it's a good business. People need rivets. Why do you make rivets? People need them. Okay, well, and now we're making units for hospitals, to be involved with making units for hospitals, so you can take your desk everywhere, because how mobile they need to be and how interconnected they need to be, and so finding solutions for medical professionals, as they're serving patients. Those are just a couple of the of companies that we've been involved with, and so that's what the drive is. So the interaction's a lot of fun, but mostly, a lot of times say, "Oh, we need to learn from you. You've done this." And I said, "Man, you're not going to learn much from me. I'm learning from you. I can maybe principles that hold a big organization together and some of those aspects, but when it comes to just operationally, how to make payroll, how to make a profit, how to serve your customer right there, in the real challenges that people face. That's what I love, and so I'm having a good time trying to figure that out, learn that from them. So it's just being curious.
So you mentioned something that's a core challenge that we see a lot is the, for lack of a better term, you used it, is there's kind of a unsexiness, so to speak, about small business. Everybody wants to go to a coast and they want to work in tech and they want to, how do you think of, and that obviously from a region perspective puts challenges on our economic, future, because that talent leaves, that talent isn't interested in coming in to work for the rivet company. Mm-hmm. They'd rather work something a little bit more, exciting. How do you think about that challenge and solving that challenge in West Michigan to keep talent and innovation here in West Michigan?
A couple of things come to mind. One is just the understanding of the reality that all work is good work and all work is honorable work. And so, my father, when he met Jay at Granite Ridge Christian High School, and but he didn't have the greatest grades, so he went to a technical school to learn, to be an electrician. And his father worked for General Electric, and so he would talk a lot about how things work, around the house, around the community. Here's how things work. He has a wonderful story of greeting the garbage collector and just thanking them, because he knows that if someone's not picking up the garbage and taking it away, it's going to be a mess. And a funny interchange, the guy's like, "What are you doing out here?" And then finally the man goes, No one's ever said thank you to me about doing this job before. No one's ever taken the time to recognize the role that I play. And I would say every role is a sexy role. If you're doing something, let's bring Mike Rowe into this. If you're doing a dirty job, you're doing something special, and you're making this world work. You're adding a value that may not be highly visible or may not be perceived to be cool, but it's highly valuable. And so that element, it is so important to make the world go around, because at the end of the day, something has to work, right? The water has to flow. The stuff has to go downhill, right? It's got to go somewhere, because we're creating, waste. So it's got to go somewhere, and someone's got to be thinking about how to do it. And if you're going to build a piece of machinery, however technologically advanced it may be, it's going to need some pieces and parts, and it's going to need to know somebody that those pieces and parts rely on each other. I think about that. I like to sail, or think about your car, or any big piece of equipment. We always used to joke about this with an aircraft. You'd see an aircraft on the ramp at the airport, and it's held in place by two pieces of wood on each side of the wheel, chocks. They put the chocks. The airplane can't roll forward or backward, because two simple pieces of wood can block the movement of the aircraft. So think of, one part goes wrong, plane can't fly. One part goes wrong, the battery's dead, the car doesn't go. Just that thoughtfulness of how interconnected everything is. So every job, every role is valuable, and we got to get beyond the perception of sexy or unsexy. We got to find out how valuable it is. And we're learning that now, when fewer and fewer people, are saying, well, I don't want to go in the workforce. And so I can't, who's going to help me in this part of my life, or in this part of my life, or whatever it may be, where, traditionally, careers that were, that were viewed or perceived to be unsexy are paying $18, $20 an hour, for that work. It's okay. It's starting to be valuable.
I've go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a little bit of West Michigan in that whole speech. You must have experienced a lot of that. Your new role, and we do it too. We go visit all these businesses, and each new day it's a new owner, and they're making some small piece or part that's usually in the supply chain. Do you see that as an opportunity for Michigan or West Michigan specifically, because we know how to make these little pieces and parts and rivets and all the way up and down? I mean, all these companies, they're fantastic owners. We go see them, and they just know how to do something really well for their customers. Is that a big opportunity for Michigan going forward, if we can put more focus and light and give them more capital and resources?
Absolutely. I think that's a talent and skill that transitions to lots of industries. We may use the auto industry obviously here, but there are pieces and parts that are part of technology or medical supplies or other sorts of areas. And I know at economic development groups are always kind of looking at what's happening. Agriculture, you can still equipmentation for agriculture to advance the work in that space. I think the Michigan and the Midwest has a wonderful manufacturing legacy, and we can continue to build on it. I think we have to keep thinking and innovating about industries to which to apply it to. And I think that the autos are thinking of new products and new things that they're going to do. That's great, but we have to keep thinking about how we can apply, making a part to different industries, so we can continue to move with what the marketplace is going to, globally. Because it's really interesting how connected. I trying to remember the statistics, but you'll probably know it better than me. But that Michigan is a trading partner to Canada is one of the highest, higher than many countries. Because of just the trade that happens, the proximity that we have, and how many companies in West Michigan are global companies. When you have a global meeting or talk about some of those things, you realize how many companies are operating around the world. And so I think that that foundation will stand us well. It will allow us to be competitive because it's a capability that the world's always going to need, but we're going to have to innovate and adjust and adapt to market trends and market needs to make sure we're connecting that piece and part to the newest piece of equipment, the newest thing that's being developed, and that we're improving that piece and part. We're making it better, more reliable, those sorts of things.
I got a two-part question for you related to West Michigan. So you talked about the biggest issue being the transmission of values and beliefs as the next generation comes about in business. I'm curious what you think if you think both Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, let's just take those two cities, knowing we have the lakeshore and everything else. What would you say are the distinctive values and beliefs of our region?
Well, I think, I think there are some, traditional personal values. There's a faith base here, that I don't want to deny, and that I share, that God made this world, and there's a purpose for it. And there's a purpose for each and every one of us. And there's so we don't live our lives in a vacuum, that there's, meaning to who we are and what we do. And that translates into caring about, as you may say, values or family values of caring about each other, caring about people. And I want to stop short, because sometimes when you talk like that, it always carries an element of judgment. Like, we're Bible Belt, God fearing, we know what's right and what's wrong. I want to make sure we remove the element of judgment from that and just say, because one of the greatest values we can have is welcoming people and creating a sense of belonging from wherever somebody may come from, or wherever somebody may be right now, whatever they're dealing with, that those values are about loving people, respecting people, and not judging people. But when you have those values as a base, I translate it to purpose. I can still believe what's right and wrong, and I have to live my life every day based on those beliefs. But if I expand it a little bit more broadly, I can start believing and encouraging people. Say, if I believe I have a purpose, you have a purpose too, and then I can be encouraging and loving and engaging in that way. And then say, now let's just take our time together, build a relationship, and figure out what it is. What are you good at? What do you like? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And that now we can get into questions rather than judgment. Oh, you dress like this, or you do this, or you do that. You're not going to be great at our company. Oh, for goodness sakes. We got to look into who the person is, because it's the inside that defines a person, not the outside that just describes them. So you get to the character of the person. So those are the values. I think there's an element of personal, kind of, if you will, traditional family values, but some of the baggage and judgment that seems to be associated with those values, I don't think is part of our future.
That's great. And the reason I'm asking that is we've been spending a lot of time up in Grand Rapids recently. We had a great lunch at Leo's, which apparently is the place to have lunch, is at Leo's.
Perfect. Great spot.
So we were there last week. Here's kind of a out of the box idea, but you think about some regions that have been really competitive and great in terms of innovation, but kind of finding synergies. You think of Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. Yeah. You think about the Twin Cities, the Bay Area, right? These are geographies, not single cities, that thrive because they're connected in some interesting way. I'm curious what you think about the possibility of a Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo as more of this kind of regional collaboration, what that would look like. Is that a good idea? How we could basically take the best of Grand Rapids, the best of Kalamazoo. You got two universities, two big cities, two manufacturing bases, and they're linked together strategically to compete as a region. Curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think anytime you're looking beyond a narrow scope and expanding your vision in a regional sense, it's always a good thing. In that that you find ways. It's so easy sometimes with the capabilities that, as you mentioned, Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids would have, that you would say, oh, we got enough, we got enough work to do right here, but we got to keep dreaming bigger and keep thinking bigger of what we could do as a region going forward. And I think it keeps coming down to making us attractive. And when you say Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, you also include the Lakeshore. And okay, so I don't know that it starts and stops even with the next definition, or it's 2 cities or 3 cities, or if we can even define that, it's a lifestyle. It's a quality of life, area, and it's a culture that exists in a space or a place that's attractive, that brings people there, and it keeps people there. I had a lot of friends who, early in their 20s, man, they had to go to the big city. Wow, they had to go to the big city. They all over the place. And then they went, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I think I'd like to, have a family someday or to do something else. Boy, Grand Rapids is pretty attractive. West Michigan's pretty attractive. I think I'm coming back home because that's what I want. That's where I want to be. And so, we have to extend and expand that attractiveness. And I think, I think with just a little bit of work, usually 1 + 1 equals a lot more than 2. So when you take 2 good cities and you decide how to work together and collaborate, you can create a lot more value, for a citizen, or for customers, or for, inside a culture in a region that can create more value for, or a higher quality of life for people who are living there.
We're about out of time. Derek, do you want to have one more question before we go rapid fire?
No, go ahead with rapid fire, Doug.
Okay.
That was a good last question. That was a good higher level.
I'm going to ask you one other question before we go to rapid fire, Doug.
All right.
And so what's something that you think is true that other people would disagree with you on?
Well, obviously everything I would think is true, people would agree, wouldn't they? I mean, just ask my wife. This is easy.
What's a conventional wisdom that you think is actually not true? Or
I'll try to, I think the free enterprise system or capitalism is true as the greatest economic system the world's ever seen. And that can be validated, but I think there's a lot of people who would disagree with that. And they see the weaknesses of it and would define capitalism by its weaknesses and say that it's not good enough. And that's where I would say, yeah, there's weaknesses. Let's fix them, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. That may be one that kind of comes to mind, this age-old challenge, because I'm not on the side that says it's just perfect the way it's working right now. Oh my gosh, everything about it. Well, that's never going to be the case of any product, service, or any economic system. It has to adapt, it has to adjust, and it has to make sure it reaches everybody. Like we were talking about earlier.
Great. We'll go wrap up here with rapid fire questions. So these are 1-word kind of answers. Are you ready?
Oh boy. Okay. You're going to keep me to 1 word. That's going to be the hardest part.
Oh yeah. A couple words.
Okay.
No. 1 word.
We'll start off with your favorite leader.
George Washington.
Courage or compassion?
Courage.
Speed or accuracy?
Can I explain that some of these?
Sure, if you want. Yeah, you can.
Well, I think with courage comes compassion. I think you lead. Sometimes it takes a little courage to do that. Just sounds out of whack. But I'll try not to defend myself. But what's your like? Speed or accuracy? I'd say accuracy.
Okay. Great ideas or great execution?
Oh boy, I'd go to execution. Great execution, because you gotta make it work. There's been too many good ideas that never got done.
A word to describe your leadership style?
Developing.
Are you a night owl or early bird?
Night owl.
Favorite Amway product?
Oh, I'd go to Double X. One of our, not Amway's first. Amway's first was LOC, but Double X was the first product of Neutralite. That was the first product that my dad and Jay sold as Neutralite distributors in 1949. And then they started Amway in 59. Then we bought Neutralite in the early 70s. And so it's become one of our best product sellers around the world, but pretty amazing product.
If you're going to take someone out to a special lunch in the Grand Rapids area as a visitor, where are you taking them?
Oh boy. Well, I'd have to take them to the Amway Grand Plaza and probably have to go up to the top to the new restaurant, Madrid.
Okay. And if you're headed to a difficult task, it's the jungle, difficult business task, who are you bringing with you?
Boy. Yeah. The team that I've worked with and trusted with, people that you trust, people that have gone through that with you before, right? That's who you rally with. You got to have your team.
And to close things out, if you had an animal that reflected your leadership, what would that animal be?
I'm going with my dog, a yellow lab. He's friendly. He's friendly. He's happy. He keeps coming back. Even if you leave him home for a long time, he welcomes you back. And so I like that style. I just, Labradors are pretty good. So I'm a dog lover.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we appreciate the time. Doug DeVos, co-chair of Amway, amongst all the other activities he has going on, a well-known figure in the DeVos family here in West Michigan. I really appreciate you joining us.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Derek. Appreciate you guys. It's a jungle out there. Keep it going, gang.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.